You know, every once in a while you see a story in the news media that is just so hilarious that you gotta get on board with it. And a perfect example of this is the residents in a certain area of Chicago being absolutely put off by the fact that they're going to move in about 500 migrants to their area.
It is insulting that you would consider such action about a forgotten community that none of you live in.
Developing tonight, outbursts and outrage at a community meeting in South Shore over a housing plan for migrants.
And all of a sudden, they're going to appropriate money for migrant housing, even though these people tend to vote Democrat, and Democrats tend to be more pro-open borders than Republicans. Now, I will say, the idea that black people are amongst the most left-wing in the country is just false. In fact, they overwhelmingly voted for and are the reason why Joe Biden won the Democratic primary in 2020, and they voted for the more moderate Hillary Clinton in 2016, both times obliterating the commie Bernie Sanders. And in reality, one of the reasons why black people tend to vote Democratic in an overwhelming block is because when you do that, when you vote as a block for one specific party, it ends up increasing your overall influence in American politics. So it's actually a very strategically sound maneuver. I just wish they were doing something like this in the Republican Party so we could lock down that demographic of people. And because I think overall Republican policies are actually better, not just for the whole, but for black Americans.
A packed house at the South Shore International College Prep High School. The crowd voicing their opinion, strongly opposing the addition of migrants in their community.
I am just outraged. I'm outraged, and I don't understand why our community was chosen.
So yeah, while we can laugh at this, I just want to point out, just because they vote Democrat, that does not mean that overall they're the most left-wing in their political party. In fact, they tend to be least left-wing or less left-wing than other factions of the Democratic Party. And it also doesn't mean that they're pro-open borders. This is one of those coalitional conflicts that we tend to see arise in American politics from time to time. That being said, I'm not going to spoil this by intellectualizing it any further. We got to talk about how they reacted to their council members deciding to put up money for migrant housing, because some of these are just amazing. But before we get into that, sponsor, let me toss it to the sponsor, then we'll talk about it on the other side. Before going out and spending a ton of money on expensive anti-aging creams and or serums, what you should do is check out if collagen loss is your problem, because adding collagen to your diet can improve your skin elasticity and that youthful glow better than almost anything on the market. This is one of the reasons why I am happy to be partnered with healthwithjustice.com, where you can try our top formulation of collagen powder. You take it daily and you just notice the strengthening of your hair, your skin, and your nails. And if you go over to healthwithjustice.com for this month, you can get 53% off plus additional bonuses that are available to those who go to healthwithjustice.com. That's healthwithjustice.com, healthwithjustice.com.
Yes, and it's still going on. This ordinance of providing funding for asylum seekers has caused emotions to run high. The most vocal responses in a long time in city council. In fact, police had to move in at one point to calm the meeting.
So I'm a big fan of narrative storytelling. I'm a big fan of literary devices, and I'm a big fan of foreshadowing. So the trepidation in this tiny Asian woman reporter's voice as she's talking about what went down in the city council meeting, to me, is just getting me so hyped, so amped for what we're about to see. I am so on board for this story. You cannot believe it. Pump it directly into my veins. Give me a needle, New York City or San Francisco or any of you places that allow people to rampantly inject drugs into their body, because I want this segment right now in terms of my bloodstream. Right now.
People attending the meeting shouted and they heckled the speakers during the public speaking portion of the meeting, whether advocating for funding migrant needs or for investment in black and brown communities. One man, Tyrone Muhammad, an ex-offender who was against the measure, police removed him from the meeting.
So they say one man, Tyrone Muhammad, ex-offender. By the way, not a very good phrasing, because I don't know that this guy was convicted of a sex crime, But you sure made it sound like it by calling him an ex-offender. Typically, we refer to sex criminals as sex offenders. You could have said ex-con, but I'm sure in your playbook of left-wing, we gotta change the language for no reason to unclarify words to make things more difficult to understand. You thought you nailed it, but yeah, the guy sounds like a sex offender, and I think you did him dirty like that. He could have just been a criminal in a different regard, but it's also funny that somebody who violated the rules of our society is mad that funding from the government is going to house people that violated the rules of our society by coming here illegally. So, very interesting that this race of the bottom feeders is going down. But you know what? I support the actions of police removing rowdy people. Where was this during the Black Lives Matter riots? Get them out of here. Toss them. I don't want him here. Let's start this rally, riot, meeting, whatever. I'm so into it.
Longtime Chicagoans say it is difficult to watch leaders suddenly come up with $51 million for new immigrants when Chicago neighborhoods remain underserved.
It should not be housed in impoverished and marginalized black and brown communities where we have food shortages and homelessness.
So first and foremost, the city of Chicago should be clamping down on crime because there's not exactly food shortages in these areas. What they're actually dealing with is the fact that a bunch of grocery stores are closing due to the fact that they allow criminals to run wild in the city. And as we've talked about time and time again, that is further driving the city into poverty. That being said, he makes an excellent point right there. When you are a nation state, when you have citizens of your own country, you should prioritize your citizens over people from another country, over people who are just economic migrants who want to come in for the opportunity. So I can't imagine if I'm walking around the city of Chicago or any place in the United States of America and I'm seeing homelessness, I'm seeing people addicted to drugs, and how we can put some money towards that. Or we can do it for foreign citizens. Most of them, or many of them, or a huge portion of them, or even some of them are lying and trying to abuse the asylum system in order to take advantage of us. How we should prioritize the citizens that are actually here in this country over those people. Also, I just want to point out, and this is something that I've said time and time again, Black Americans are not the most progressive, even if they're the most loyal Democratic voters in the country. Remember, they backed Joe Biden and single-handedly defeated communism incarnate in Bernie Sanders in both 2016 and in 2020. And this is actually represented perfectly in this meeting, because guess who comes in here to step up and virtue signal about the migrants?
I don't know if you've actually talked to these refugees who come here, but what they need are homes and jobs. The same that the people who live here need as well.
I mean, who is surprised by the dynamic of this meeting? You have a white-looking hippie dude who probably spends more money than many of these so-called refugees. In fact, I think they're seeking asylum, so they would be asylees. Let me correct you on that. You stupid. Let me fact-check you on that, because minor petty details are what I do for the living. But this is a guy who clearly spends way more money conditioning his hair than these people make in a living, so I think he should step up himself instead of demanding the city pay to house these people. Cut his own hair, use some cheap VO5 shampoo from the gas station, and give the rest of that money to the migrants that you love so much. Get the wax and all that product out of your hair. You spend all that time, all that money, all that effort trying to look like you don't give a damn, and I'm tired of it. I'm not on board with it, and maybe this has something to do with my hair not being all that nice in comparison, but you know what? We're not going to talk about this because we're not into self-reflection. However, it is crucial to point out that, of course, the left-wing white guy is the one who's like, they need all this stuff, we need to protect them, and blah, blah, blah. And oh my god, what if these people ended up on the streets? I mean, remember, there are people currently on the streets that are citizens of the country, but this guy's a citizen of the world. This guy is the most progressive, the most virtuous. I mean, a bunch of these black people, if you've noticed, who are speaking out, showed up in suits because it was a city council meeting, and they're older, and thus they have a more air about themselves when it comes to decorum and how you would show up to one of these formal events. But this guy, who probably has a trust fund twice the size of half the people's net worth in this room, showed up in a t-shirt, and after he stops by to get asparagus water from Whole Foods, really feels like he is a man of the people.
How dare this mayor and city council have the guts to give migrants $51 million. I demand you
to have the same passion and urgency to pass the City of Chicago reparations order.
So I gotta point something out to you guys, which is, I knew that this was happening, and I can't confirm it because I don't have a live reaction, but when my brother presented me this story, when my brother did the thing from the phone where he shoots it from the phone to the Roku on the TV in order to play it, and by the way, this is the motion for that, I believe they call it casting it to the TV, and this guy came to speak, and he did that long pause where he put his hands up. I'm like, yo, this guy's gonna ask for reparations. I swear to God, I know that this is going to be a race to the bottom in terms of woke policies, and essentially he's Dave Chappelleing it, where people who are not smart think he's like right-wing or conservative, when in reality the message overall of all of Dave Chappelle's new stand-up acts is that being black in America trumps everything, and guess what? This man delivered. He's like, you got $51 million for these migrants? Well, pass the City of Chicago Reparations Act or whatever. Now, I also want to point out, and this is probably not the most crucial thing, but you know what? Listen, we're still going to talk about it. Is the fact that there are chapters in this local news segment, and one of these chapters says Mayor Rahm Emanuel, so I actually had to check like 3 times to figure out whether or not this was an old story being mixed in with the news story, but again, it was put up 8 days ago from the time of me recording this video, so I do think it is new and valid and legitimate. But now that we have heard from the black individual who wants reparations, let's throw it to another woke activist.
People should be treated with care and compassion, so they can live their lives with dignity and respect. However, when recently arrived families are sleeping on the floors of police stations with nowhere to go, we know that Chicago is not living up to its values.
You know what? This news segment saying Mayor Rahm Emanuel got it completely wrong, and I know that for sure because I actually spotted the COVID mask behind red shirt guy who spoke earlier while this woman was talking. And also, I just want to say that this Asian Americans Advancing Justice woke organization that I know if I look into, I'll be banging my head against the wall. It's probably a terrible organization. And by the way, this woman right here, a terrible actress. Just not invoking the passion enough. Maybe take another public speaking course in your college campus. Also, we should point out the fact that if she goes to school, probably with this white guy who's also here, they probably go to one of those campuses where you're not supposed to leave the property due to the fact that there's insane crime around a lot of nationally recognized college campuses in the United States of America. So she is somebody who probably also advocates for the policies that allow the criminals to run wild, and unsurprisingly, she wants to defend the poor, sad migrants who apparently supersede our regular citizens. Now, I'm not in favor of reparations. I think that's ridiculous and absurd. A huge portion of this meeting is absurdly stupid policy runoff, but if you wanted to ask me what should be prioritized by the city of Chicago, black Americans who disproportionately live in poorer, crime-ridden areas, black Americans who are disproportionately in poverty, or migrants who are not citizens of the United States of America, I'm going to pick black Americans each and every time. I'm going to pick any group of Americans over any group of non-Americans in circumstances like this. And by the way, I'm not in general somebody who's against immigration into the United States of America, or in general against accepting refugees or asylum seekers when it's actually valid. That being said, when a bunch of economic migrants come at the moment that Joe Biden is relaxing an immigration policy that is meant to let in all these people, and they all say it's just way too dangerous in their country, but they skip past 4 different countries in order to get to their first choice being the United States of America, I don't buy it as much. I'm not on board as much. I'm not in favor of it, and we need to do something to fix our asylum system because obviously it's creating abuse and it's creating tension in this community and many other communities between the people who actually have to live and deal with the consequences of this versus professional activist college kids who are total dorks who don't really understand what they're advocating for. Now, I will also add that this is something that border towns in the United States of America have been dealing with for decades. And I think it's very telling that a lot of these left-wing cities, and it's not just Chicago, it's not just New York City, but many other cities across this country are freaking out when they are confronted with the policies that they've been inadvertently voting for, because I don't think immigration is top of mind for these people when they're going to the voting booths, when it impacts them to a way smaller percentage compared to a lot of these border towns. And honestly, if we're being 100% realistic about this, the only places that are not hypocritical about these policies are places like Los Angeles or places like San Diego, and San Diego is actually more of a mixed bag. They tend to vote more Republican in their mayoral elections than other parts of California, than other major cities, because they, like the border towns in Texas, Arizona, all these other places, have also been dealing with a rush of people to the border, but they keep voting that way, so they, to a certain degree, are okay with it. It's just so funny, though, that we're watching Chicago residents flip out over a couple of migrants over just $50 million, when in reality, these costs have been being paid by small towns with way less population where they're just overrun by these migrants. So very interesting to see how they're all fighting over this. They're at each other's throats over this when it's just a small sliver of what they've been voting for, even if it's not something that they had in mind when they were going to the voting booth.
And now the alderpersons are voicing their opinions before they vote. It started with 17th Ward Alderman David Moore, who said it breaks his heart to see this issue turn into a racial issue, though he is urging his colleagues to vote no on it.
Now, to be clear, this statement right there about how, an alderman was very upset, very hurt that this became a racial issue. No, absolutely not. I don't want to hear that nonsense. Every single issue has been put forward by the left wing in racial terms. In fact, we're told that even the Department of Transportation, when talking about highways, has to deal with the systemic structural racism of asphalt on the ground because of the systemic structures and the systemic structural structures and racism. So you can't infuse racism into absolutely everything and then get mad when the people you told to see racism in everything come to you on an issue that you care about and say, you know what? You're not prioritizing the black experience. Honestly, you're basically migrant gentrifying our community, and we're not in favor of it. You pandered to this over and over again. You told these people that they should look for racism under every corner. You told them that they should be worried about evil white racism. Where's the evil white racism? So some of them are coming to the table with those claims. Now, I will say that other people are coming to the table with way more legitimate claims, setting aside the, the perpetual racism under every corner and all of that. In reality, we should be prioritizing American citizens, no matter where they come from or what they look like or what their religion is, over people who shouldn't even be here, who came here illegally, who are abusing our system. So there is something to that side, even if I don't agree with the racial political angle that some of them are bringing up, or how we need to have reparations in terms of billions of dollars because of this $50 million. But we should be doing more for our black communities that are black citizens of the United States of America than for people who are not citizens of the United States of America. Remember, this $50 million is not going towards law enforcement. It's not going towards prosecuting the criminal element that is in the city of Chicago, making that area safer, thus driving down the crime rate, thus actually increasing the potential for economic opportunity within that city. So they're not doing what they're supposed to do as a city. And I think there is very good reasons to argue against this based on those grounds. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the city of Chicago, freaking out. Till next time.